Chapter 11, Vision 1, This is where you'll be living for the duration of your stay. Today was the inauguration day. Besides the speech, we were introduced to our dorm rooms. Because of my situation, I was introduced to the dorms before the others. As such, I was separated from Leon. It was a good thing. Thinking back at his expression, my face nearly crumbled. Here's the key. You'll need it to access your dorm. I stood silently to observe the building. The Rondio building. With over 10 floors, it looked rather grand. It was indeed a building fitting the top ranker. Cadet Julian? I finally took note of the black card near me, thank you. It seemed nothing fancy. Just a plain old metallic card. If you need anything else from me, please feel free to inform me. I will. As I entered the building, I climbed the stairs and headed to the last floor. That was where my room was. Being the number 1 rank did have its perks. This should be it. A tall wooden door met my sight. I didn't hesitate to swipe my card, unlocking the door to the room. Wow. It wasn't as though I didn't expect it, but it's big. The place was grand. Sizable windows adorned the space at one end, granting me a view of the huge garden below. Sofas and an array of decorations throughout the room complemented the space. On any normal occasion, I would have taken my time to explore the place more. Unfortunately, I wasn't someone who could afford to waste time. I sat down on the ground and went ahead with my training. My mind was tired, and so was my body. Even so, I had no choice but to push away the fatigue and train. I was the one who pushed myself to this point. I had to own up to my choices. DZZ. I failed on the first try. Again. But I didn't lose hope. I had no choice but to continue. Once again, this was what I had done to myself. The current spell I was practicing was called Hands of Malady. It was an elemental spell that belonged to the curse element. Being a beginner-type spell, its difficulty wasn't very high. From what Leon told me, spells were classified into 5 different ranks: beginner, intermediate, advanced, superior, and perfected. What set the spells apart was the number of runes each spell contained. Hands of Malady, being a beginner-type spell, only had 12 runes. My goal was to connect each rune before fully forming a magic circle, which I have yet to achieve. So long as I managed to connect all 12 and complete the circle, the spell would activate, and I'd be able to summon the spell whenever I wanted. The key point was that I had to complete the circle before using it. DZZ. But things weren't going very smoothly. Another failure. I had managed to connect 4 of the 12 runes. I didn't lose hope. Again. Mana flowed out from my abdomen. Like a warm current, I slowly guided it toward the tip of my fingers, where the faint form of a circle appeared. That was the first step. Now the runes. Rune 1. Rune 2. Rune 3. Rune 5. Rune S. DZZ. It shattered again. I felt frustrated, but I didn't give up. There was obvious improvement. So I continued. More, just a little. As if I were in a trance, my mind worked in overdrive, and runes connected one after another. The sight left a strange feeling on my body. It made me crave more. Yeah. I felt my skin crawl at the sight of the runes lighting up in front of me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I was so excited that I didn't even notice that something wet was trickling down my nostrils. All I thought about at the moment was, a little. Come on. The runes. Just a little. I could feel it. So long as I kept going, I could achieve it. My state of mind was perfect. This was a chance that I was sure I couldn't give up on. I had to try now. More. Before I lost the sensation. I had to continue. I could finally summon my first spell. So long as UK. A weird sound escaped my lips, and I realized something. How could this be? I can't breathe. The air just wouldn't enter my body. No matter how hard I tried, my mouth wouldn't open. As if I had forgotten how to. I couldn't even use my nose. My head felt lightheaded all of a sudden. The world in front of me started to shift. In my mind, I knew the reasoning behind this situation. I stared at the magic circle that balanced at the tip of my fingers. There were 10 runes. 2 more to go. I could do it. Yeah. I pushed myself. Drip. Drip. Something ran down from both the holes in my nose. It stained the polished floor in red. But I chose to ignore it. I couldn't afford to pause. My situation didn't allow me to. It came as a result of my actions. I had to own up to them. Ugh. My mind started to crave oxygen. The sensation became more and more pronounced. I felt a weird tingle in my chest. My toes wiggled. So did my left arm. Almost as if on impulse. I couldn't breathe. My mind desperately told me to let go. Let the circle shatter. Breathe. But I couldn't. Not when I was this close. No. Not yet. So close. The 10th rune lit up. I could feel it. I was almost there. And more. My voice came out hoarse. But I was close. So close. 11 runes. Yes. I was. DZZ. Ah. Thump. Growing limp, my body gave up on me. Whop. I felt my head smack against the floor. Ha. 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 And I heavily gulped for air. The consequences of my actions finally caught up to me. I lost control of my body. It trembled furiously on the ground. KH. Awk. The pain was overwhelming. And no. All I could think of was my failure. I could deal with pain. But I couldn't deal with my failure. I was so close. Just a few seconds away. Whop. No. The sense of desperation felt overwhelming. It was eating away at me. And no. Ah. So much so that the moment I felt I could control my body again, I tried again. But. DZZ. And no. 4 runes. How could this be? Again. DZZ. The circle shattered again. 3 runes. Ah. My body felt weak. Realization hit me. I had lost that state of mind. The chance for me to finally grasp the circle. I had failed. Ha. My chest trembled as my arm fell limp. I felt weak. My head was light, and the world was hazy. When it finally hit me, though. KHH. I clenched my teeth tightly. Close. I was so close. If only I had lasted just a few more seconds. Fuck. How could this body fail me at such an important moment? Damn it. Ah. I screamed at the top of my lungs. The sense of frustration I felt wasn't something I could contain. Bang. I smacked my fist against the floor. Bang. I did it again. Damn it. I felt so frustrated. It was there. Right in front of me. I was so close. So. Why? Why couldn't I do it? I felt like screaming again. But as I opened my mouth, nothing came out. That was when I realized. I had lost my voice. Ha. Ha. All that came out of my mouth were my heavy gasps for air. I closed my mouth shortly after. And made a resolve for myself. This wasn't the end. Until my body broke apart, I was going to succeed. I wasn't going to let myself die an easy death. I wasn't. I blinked. Where am I? I struggled to comprehend my situation. All it took was a blink and the scenery around me changed. Wasn't I just in my room? Trees surrounded me from all sides while the moon hovered in the sky. It was a completely different environment to my room. My body. As if I had lost control of my body, it moved on its own. Sneakily moving around the trees. As if it was trying to hide from something. This continued for a while. All until. Are you seriously the Black Star? A cold voice reached my ears. My body trembled, and my feet came to a stop. Slowly, my head turned, and a figure appeared. He wore a black hood and hid his appearance. A strange sense of oppression came out of his body as he slowly approached me. What's going on? The situation confused me. This scene. Experience. It felt eerily familiar. It reminded me of my first vision right before I came to this world. Could this be? You're a lot weaker than I thought. The gap between us shrank. I took a step back. Hey! Though I couldn't see, it felt as if he was smiling beneath his hood. The scene seemed to be amusing to him. How low has Haven fallen for them to select someone as incompetent as you? Not only are you incapable of using any spells, but you even went ahead and challenged everyone with that puny arrogance of yours. It's no wonder you lost your first duel. I lost the duel? Though I wasn't completely sure, I had a feeling this body, vision, belonged to a future version of myself. Not the previous Julian. Therefore. So in the end, I still lost? It took me no longer than an hour to realize I was way in over my head when I challenged everyone. There was no way I could beat anyone with my current skills. A fool. An idiot. That was who I was. And yet. No, it's simply because I didn't do enough. I didn't stop my resolve for 1 second. If I lost, then it meant I didn't try hard enough. I wasn't desperate enough. The pain I went through wasn't enough. In any case, my attention shifted back to the hooded man. His hidden gaze fell on me, and I felt my entire body shiver. As if 2 hands had gripped my throat, I had a hard time breathing. A familiar sensation gripped my entire body. It was fear. I should probably end this. He approached me with a leisurely step, coming to a halt a few centimeters from me. His eyes locked onto me, and I felt my breath leave my body. There are other more important people I need to take care of. The world turned black shortly after. Wah! My eyes flared open, and my body sat up. Sweat poured down from all over my body as I took deep and unsteady breaths. Back? I was struggling to grasp my situation. Thousands of questions flooded my mind. What was that? Who was he? And why did he kill me? Where did I die? And just as my head throbbed in pain as I tried to understand the vision, something appeared in front of me, and a weird sound came out of my mouth. That was because Julian D. of Venus. Level 17, Tier 1 Magician. Exp. 0%-16% 100%. Profession, Magician. Type, Elemental, Curse. Type, Mind, Emotive. Spells. Beginner type spell, Emotive, Anger. Beginner type spell, Emotive, Sadness. Beginner type spell, Emotive, Fear. Beginner type spell, Emotive, Happiness. Beginner type spell, Emotive, Disgust. Beginner type spell, Emotive, Surprise. Beginner type spell, Curse, Chains of Alakantria. Beginner type spell, Curse, Hands of Malady. Skills. Innate, Foresight. Julian D. of Venus. A weird screen floated in front of me. One that multiple other smaller ones accompanied. Level 1. Fear, EXP plus 0.01%. Level 1. Fear, EXP plus 0.05%. Level 1. Fear, EXP plus 0.04%. Level 1. Fear, EXP plus 0.3%. Level 1. Fear, EXP plus 0.01%. Chapter 12, Vision, 2. What is this? It was the first time I saw this screen. No, not quite. I think I remember catching a small glimpse of it before. When exactly? I couldn't quite remember. Most probably the moment I came into this world. Back then, I had been so disoriented that I probably hadn't noticed. But what gives? Why did it suddenly appear? It sort of looks like a status S, The screen disappeared all of a sudden. What's going on? I leaned my head back. Why did the screen disappear? Was it because I spoke? Or, an idea floated in my mind and I opened my mouth to mumble. Status.
Julian D. of Venus. Level, 17, Tier 1 Magician. Exp. 0%-16%-100%. Profession, Magician. Type, Elemental, Curse. Type, Mind, Emotive. Spells. Beginner type spell, Emotive, Anger. Beginner type spell, Emotive, Sadness. Beginner type spell, Emotive, Fear. Beginner type spell, Emotive, Happiness. Beginner type spell, Emotive, Disgust. Beginner type spell, Emotive, Surprise. Beginner type spell, Curse, Chains of Alakantria. Beginner type spell, Curse, Hands of Malady. Skills. Innate, Foresight.
So there was a trigger. Status. I extended my hand forward in hopes of seeing if I could touch it, but as my hand neared the window, it simply phased through. So I can't touch it. That became apparent after a couple more tries. 2. I took a deep breath. My head was still light and I was still recovering from my training. Therefore, it was hard for me to remain focused. It took several deep breaths before I could finally concentrate again. Several things jumped out the moment I laid my eyes on the screen. Exp. Level 17. Tier 1 Magician? As expected, this was similar to a game system. I wasn't much of a gamer, but I understood the concept of levels and exp. Magicians were divided into 10 tiers. From what I knew, the classification went as this: Tier 1 to 2, Apprentice Tier 3 to 4, Master Mage Tier 5 to 6, High Wizard Tier 7 to 8, Archwizard Tier 9, Monarch Tier 10, Zenith. Level 17. So I'm tier 1. That was an interesting piece of information. For one to test their tier, they needed a special orb that Leon had told me about. For the past week, I had been curious about my tier. While I was aware through Leon that I had reached tier 1, what I wasn't aware of was the fact that I'm on the verge of tier 2. Who would have thought? Or was I? I felt my brows slowly come together into a knit. I'm level 17 and tier 1. Is it safe to assume that my tier changes with every 10 levels? It sounded logical, but I'll need to observe. There was no proof of my judgment. For now, I decided to pay close attention to it. When the time came, I'd be able to know if my assumption was correct or not. My gaze shifted down. Spell list. I wasn't surprised by the spells listed in front of me. Hands of Malady was a spell I was already practicing. It was Leon who had told me about it. What I was surprised about, however, was what was written beneath it. Innate skill. Insight. That explains it. An answer to one of my questions had finally been answered. The reasoning behind the vision was all due to this skill. The thought made me frown, and several more questions arose in my mind. Is there some sort of trigger to these visions? Can I activate it whenever I want? I thought back to the vision I just had. How low has Haven fallen for them to select someone as incompetent as you? Not only are you incapable of using any spells, but you even went ahead and challenged everyone with that puny arrogance of yours. It's no wonder you lost your first duel. I should probably end this. There are other more important people I need to take care of. His cold voice echoed at the back of my mind. My hand unconsciously trembled at the thought. The sensation I felt back in the visions. I could still feel it vividly in my mind. It sent shivers down my spine. And I need to train. Reminded me yet again about my situation. Ha. I sat down on the ground and shifted my right hand forward. Closing my eyes, I channeled my mana. All right. I swallowed a mouthful of saliva. Let's start. But, nothing came out of my hand. I could feel the mana in my core. It was there. But, why? My hand started to visibly tremble. So did my lips. Come on, come out. I thought back at what I did in the past. I tried to repeat it. Having done it hundreds of times over the past week, surely I could do it, right? But, it's not coming out. The mana simply refused to move along my body. I knew the reason why. I just didn't want to acknowledge it. Come on. Just a little. I swallowed yet again. No. And no. My mind kept wandering back to moments ago. When I failed. And the pain that came after it. It replayed in my mind. Over and over again. It's nothing. In the end, I was afraid. Afraid of my efforts going to waste like before. What am I even doing this for? To the point where I started to question my own objectives. Why was I doing so much? Was it because I was just that desperate for answers? Was that the reason why I was pushing myself so hard? No. How laughable. Of course, it wasn't. Deep down, I knew the answer. Why I was pushing myself so hard. Even if it was at the cost of my own sanity and body. Go back. The words escaped from my lips almost as if they were in a whisper. Brother. An image conjured in my mind. One of a young boy. 16 years old. And alone. What I wanted wasn't an answer. It was a way back. Mana flowed out from my core. My entire body shivered as a result. The world started to become a blur, and I could hardly make out what was real and what was fake. But that didn't deter me from training. I had a goal in mind. One that I had to achieve. So even though I was afraid, my body hurt, and I was exhausted. I continued to push myself. I had no choice. I had to do it. Puff. A plume of smoke floated in the air. Long flowing platinum hair, deep red eyes, curvaceous body. Kira Milne casually sat on the stairs of the Rondio dorms. It was a building only the top rankers were allowed to be in. She was one of them. That said, TSK. They didn't allow one to smoke inside. She had no choice but to smoke outside. Fucking bullshit. It was an irritating thought. For such a grand and luxurious building, how could they not allow her to smoke? Like, seriously. What did she pay so much to attend this place for? Maybe if I was the Black Star, she thought back to the Black Star. Julian of the Avenus Barony. Maybe he could smoke in his room? It was a thought that entertained her for a bit. At first glance, he seemed quite arrogant. enough to infuriate practically every first-year cadet. But unlike the others, she wasn't particularly interested in such meaningless squabbles. Lol. Rather, she found him to be somewhat funny. Fucking jokes. Puff. The plume of smoke drifted in the air as she took another drag of the cigarette. Kira, who was enjoying herself at the steps of the building, suddenly raised her head, catching a glimpse of an approaching figure. She was quick to flick the cigarette away. There was a certain aura about the approaching figure that attracted the gazes of all those around. Her graceful movements exuded a sense of authority, flowing with sophistication and ease, concealing any hint of her flaws. It was a figure she knew all too well. How could she not know her? A woman of the Megrail family. The princess of the empire. Aoife Kell Megrail. TSK. Though she was in a class of her own, Kira couldn't help but click her tongue. Her foot dragged to where the cigarette was and she stepped on it, twisting her foot slightly. Kira looked down on her. As a noble of high lineage, she was well acquainted with Aoife. They had met many times in past events. She shone brightly wherever she went. Was always the spotlight. That didn't bother Kira much. Not until the day of her coming-of-age ceremony and her talent was made known to Aoife and the royal family. As a result, she, who was supposed to have started her training at age 14, was forced to train at 17. The same age as low-end nobles. For what reason? This bitch. Cadet. Aoife stopped in front of her. Her yellow eyes slowly sank down to meet Kira's gaze. Her expression didn't say much. It was hard to read. There was nothing unusual about this. She had always been like this. A blank piece of paper with hardly any thoughts. And the thought irritated Kira even more. What, can you move? Kira blinked and looked around. Then she realized. She was blocking the entrance. But, is that all? No form of acknowledgement. A name? Just. Cadet? They had met several times in the past. Even made brief conversation. It was complete disregard. Cadet? Kira pursed her lips and smiled. It was a bright smile. One of the brightest she had ever displayed. And what followed after her smile was, "Fuck you." A middle finger. Drip. Drip. Sweat mixed with my blood. My eyes stung. And my vision was blurred. A day had passed. It was now early in the morning. And DZZ. Failed. I was met with another failure. The result of my efforts was the connection of 8 runes. A result that was far beneath my desired goal. 2. Taking a deep breath, I thought about continuing again, when to talk. The door knocked. Young master. And a familiar voice sounded. So it's time. There could only be one reason for him to call me. The first day of the academy was about to start. I'm coming, Yuke. Thump. My legs gave out when I tried to stand up. Fortunately, I was able to stop myself from falling face flat on the floor by grasping the side of the sofa. Ha. Ha. My breaths were heavy and my hands were unusually pale. It was obvious that my body was in poor condition. But, 2. Taking another breath, I forced myself into the shower. I stumbled several times in the process before finally making it to the valve where I turned on the cold water. My skin prickled at the cold. But at the same time, my mind regained some clarity. Supporting myself with both hands on the wall, I let the water trickle down my back. One might think I'd be distressed with the results of my training. In some ways I was. But, almost. At the same time, I was also thrilled. It wasn't fruitless. There was definitely a progression. Ha! I laughed out in exasperation. It was going to take time, but I knew I could do it. I was that desperate. Chapter 13, The Weakest Black Star, 1. The campus was large. It took me about 5 minutes to get to the main building from the dorms. That was where we were supposed to be. It was one of the 7 halls of the institute and where first-year cadets attended their lessons. What class are we in? The hall was large. It was one big building with a pathway flanked by vibrant flowers and trees that guided toward the entrance, where a row of statues stood in solemn formation. It overflowed with students. Most troublesome were the gazes they looked at me with. Some avoided me, while others seemed to be openly hostile. I was fine with that. It came as a result of my actions on the first day. Our class should be there. Leon pointed towards a certain door. At first glance, it didn't seem all that impressive. But why is there nobody going there? Unlike the other classrooms, which were open and filled with cadets passing through, this one seemed rather isolated. As if people were avoiding it. Did you not read the manual? Manual? Ah. I took a small leaflet from my pocket. I remembered receiving it yesterday, but because my focus had been on my training, I forgot all about it. This? Yeah, I scanned through the contents. In short, we're late. That's right. And you didn't tell me about it? I thought you were aware. There were times when I really wanted to strangle this guy. If not for the fact that he was helping me and that he was stronger, I'd already be at it. That said, I wonder what his end goal is. I was still not sure why he was helping me. He said something about it benefiting him. How so? As expected, I still can't trust him. The same was true for him to me. In a way, we weren't that much different. Staring at the door to the classroom, I sighed. I felt strangely nervous. It wasn't so much because I was scared of people challenging me. I was fine with that. What I was nervous about was my abilities. They were not up to par at that moment. I was probably the weakest cadet present. Who? After secretly collecting my breath, I slowly and carefully approached the door. Creak, the interior was sleek, long wooden desks lined up the sides, cascading up. They were all filled to the brim, with barely any empty spots. Immediately, all eyes fell on me. They were burdensome. But the most burdensome of them all was the one that belonged to the woman in front of me. Most likely, our instructor. Cadets. Her crystal blue eyes shifted between Leon and me. She had short brown hair and seemed to be in her mid-40s. Alternating her gaze between the two of us, she finally opened her mouth to say, "You're late." I was already aware. Things would have been easier if I just apologized, but I recalled Leon's description of the previous Julian and answered flatly, "That seems to be the case." Seems to be the case? My answer left her exasperated as she made a face. I felt a little sorry for her, but I didn't show it on the outside and kept my face stoic. She opened her mouth but closed it right after. "Just go. Take a seat." Thank you." I did just that. Finding the nearest seat I could find, I sat down and took a breath. That was easier than I expected. She was probably a lenient teacher. Or so I thought. "You're late. Get out of my class." Staring at the student who had just entered the class and got kicked out, I opened my mouth to say something when I realized I couldn't say anything. Why? I looked to my left, where Leon sat. He looked at me and then shrugged. Probably our looks. Oh. The lecture resumed. Continuing from where I was. As you all are currently aware, magic is subdivided into 3 different categories. Mind, elemental, and body. The classroom fell into silence. The instructor's voice smoothly echoed throughout the classroom. Each category is further divided into subcategories. Take the mind classification as an example. With emotive, telekinesis, spirit, and telepathy, it contains a total of 4 subcategories. Or some like to say, paths. I strained my ears to listen closely to the lecture. All information was vital. I needed to pay close attention to all that was being said. As is known, everyone can practice magic. If you can manipulate mana, you have the qualifications to become a magician or knight. That of course, isn't a problem for all of you present. She seemed to eye certain students, her gaze eventually falling on me. Talent is merely a factor that indicates the rate of your improvement. It does not limit you in the practice of other paths. I took note of this piece of information in my mind. My talents currently lie in the curse and emotive subcategories. If it was possible for me to practice things outside of those 2 categories, then it was worth considering for the future. Now, time for a question. The lecturer looked around the classroom. I felt her gaze linger in my direction for a brief moment. What sort of? She smiled. Of all the categories, which do you deem to be the weakest? The weakest? Murmurs filled the classroom as the students discussed among themselves. Eventually, one of the cadets raised their hands. He stood out immediately with his tall height, blonde hair, and blue eyes. The fact that his appearance garnered the attention of many of the people present told me all that I needed to know about him. He was strong. Probably. What makes you think that's the case? It's the longest category to learn. Not only that, but you must be able to touch your opponent to influence their emotions. If they can't touch you, they're useless. That's not the case. With a shake of her head, the instructor corrected, that's merely on the basis that they are on the first level of mastery. At a higher stage, they can influence someone with mere words. Further down the path, and they can read emotions. I listened to her words carefully. The emotive subcategory was still an enigma to me. Unlike with my curse subcategory, I couldn't practice it through repetition training. The only way for me to further the emotive path was through the understanding of emotions. The more I understood, the more I improved. Now that I think about it, she mentioned something about first-level mastery, so if I improve it, I'll be able to influence people with words? The thought excited me for some reason. Was there more to it? The cadet continued, that is indeed true, but it's also true that it's not easy to achieve. It may take a lot of years to get to a level where one can influence another's emotions. To be able to influence them through words? He scoffed, you will need to be as old as my father to be able to get there. That's not necessarily true. The instructor shook her head. There are many cases where people achieve such a. The reality was that I was unsure whether I was capable of handling it. The after effect from last time left a scar in my mind. Like a mental block, it made me avoid it. I was just not ready. But you were telling me I merely scratched the surface of what's possible? Cadet Julian. Feeling the instructor's gaze, I turned to face her. As an emotive mage yourself, what do you think about Cadet Anders's answer? What did I think about it? He's right. All his words made sense. From what I experienced, he was right in absolutely every way. The emotive field was a path that would probably take someone ages to master. It encompassed all the experiences of one's life and molded them in the form of emotions. Unless someone constantly experiences all those emotions, they won't be able to improve. In that regard, it was the weakest of all the other paths. But I turned my wrist slightly. My eyes fell on the clover tattoo. Was that the same for me? The classroom fell silent. They all were seemingly awaiting my answer. What's he going to say? How will he answer? Their faces all said the same thing. And I looked back to face the cadet. Was it Anderson? I found the corner of my lips lifting slightly. It's bullshit. An answer flowed out of my mouth. Weakest? There's no such thing. I wasn't just bullshitting at the moment. These were my true thoughts. There. All of a sudden, he started talking about something different. Most probably what he wanted to say from the start. Do you think none of us see it? Your mana flow is weak. You don't even seem to be capable of properly controlling your mana. On good God, I don't know why you're ranked first. His words seemed to echo the thoughts of many of the people present in the classroom, with many of them nodding along. I took in the sight. My best guess is because of your achievements in the emotive field. Even then, I doubt you'll be able to do anything to me. When he finally said what he wanted to say, with a look of scorn, he added, simply put, you're not fit for the role. You're weak. Once again, the room fell into silence. All eyes were trained on me. Ha! With all attention on me, I leaned my head back and closed my eyes. So they noticed. It wasn't as though I didn't expect it. Everyone must have noticed it during the first day. The fact that I was weak. That I wasn't on the same level as them. I understood this even more clearly than they did. It was for this reason that I provoked everyone. Trained to the point of insanity. His words made sense, and there was nothing wrong with them. Still. You're wrong. My eyes were still closed, so I couldn't see. All that I saw was darkness. In that darkness, I could feel my hand move towards my forearm, where the four-leaved clover rested. I was a little hesitant at first, but then, I was reminded of my goal. That was when my mind became firm. Right. To achieve my goal, I need to make full use of all the advantages I have. Therefore, my finger pressed down on my forearm. Nobody but me can be the Black Star. Chapter 14, The Weakest Black Star, 2. A familiar darkness embraced me. One that disappeared with the presence of a wheel. Trrrrr. It spun. The colors alternated with one another. The scene was familiar, and I waited with bated breath. Yet again, I was reminded of the pain I underwent after the experience and nervousness started to creep in. What emotion was it going to stop on? Don't let it be fear. Anything but that. The wheel eventually stopped, and my gaze fell on the long red arrow. Ah! Blue. Sadness. The world quaked. My scenery slowly started to change, and my body sank in what seemed to be a sofa? Gradually, an environment started to form. My chest felt heavy all of a sudden. Phew. Enough to make me want to take a deep breath. Why? I licked my lips. They were dry. My mouth trembled. Why am I back here? Home. This place I was all too familiar with. It was home. The place I lived before coming to this world. Ha! The pain in my chest intensified. One that was accompanied by a sense of emptiness. I missed this place. I knew it was fake. A fabric of the skill I was using. That's why it hurt. Because I knew it wasn't real. Shit. Click, the door opened and a familiar figure entered. Noel? Yo, I'm back, brother. He looked no different than I last remembered. With his usual smile, he walked up to the desk set up in the living room. My fingers twisted. I've got some takeaway. Kinda expensive, but worth it. Damn Chinese place is so tasty, Tilda. I think I'm addicted. Oh. The Chinese place. Right. It was his favorite place. He glanced back and smirked. Hey, I got some for you as well. Don't make such a face. I opened my mouth but found myself unable to speak. The words just refused to leave my mouth. All of this. It felt so real. Could it be that all that I experienced was fake? Deep down, I knew that it didn't make sense. The pain I felt. The frustration I felt. And everything that I experienced. Was that really fake? All of it? Brother? Noel turned around. His usual smile was there. Carrying the plate, he walked in my direction before eventually stopping in front of me. I studied his face closely. Here, and I realized. Eat well. He wasn't looking at me. The plate phased through my body, calmly resting on the sofa. Make sure you eat well. He then calmly went back to the table and started eating, his back facing me. Ha! My heart squeezed. The emotions I felt were wholly mine. It wasn't like last time when they were injected into me. I felt a sharp pain like my heart was being stabbed. My breath caught, as if my air passages were being crushed. All because of the simple fact that it's good, right? My brother's shoulders were shaking. It was strange. In my mind, I knew this was fake. There's no way my brother would act this way. But was that really the case? Was what I was seeing truly fake? Or was this the reality of his life now? Why, you're enjoying your food? He never looked back. It was as if he couldn't look back. But I could see it. His shoulders. They were shaking. Even more than before. Why? I was running out of breath, and my vision blurred. A pain unlike any other invaded my body. Why did it have to be like this? Rustle. A rustling caught my attention. If not for the fact that I was rooted to the spot, I would have stood up immediately. Noel! I shouted at the top of my lungs. Panic flooded every part of me as I tried to wrestle against the chains that kept me on the seat. But my voice didn't reach him. Against his temple, Noel held a gun. No, 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 no. What was this? What am I seeing? How did he? Hey! It was as if a piece of my heart was being torn. Scraped off. My neck twisted, and the veins on my neck protruded. What are you doing? Stop. Stop. I'm tired. Noel remained motionless. His voice seemed to be devoid of anything. As if he had lost track of himself. No, don't. Hey, brother. Finally, he turned to look at me. That was when I stopped my struggles. Drip. Drip. His face was stained with tears. But the scariest part was his eyes. They were empty. Devoid of any of the usual spark he had. No. Why did you leave me? I knew he wasn't addressing me. There was nobody in the room. It was just him. He was talking to himself. But I felt compelled to respond. I didn't choose to leave. Right, you had no choice. He answered in a manner that suggested he could hear me. But I knew he couldn't. After all, he wasn't looking at me. It's cold. Lonely. I have nobody. Our parents died. You were the only one left. Now that you're gone. Nobody cares. My chest pounded. The pain seemed to strangle the words out of me. I'm scared. Drip. I don't know what to do. Why does everyone leave me? What did I do? Am I the problem? Is that it? No, that's not. He. A hollow laugh escaped his lips. I should just end it, right? That way. I won't be alone anymore. At worst, I'll be with darkness. It's nothing different than now. No. I finally snapped out of it. What replaced the pain that entangled my heart was another emotion. Anger. I knew he couldn't listen, but I still spoke. No, shouted. You fucking idiot. I stopped everything so that you could live better. My chemotherapy, I stopped it because I wanted him to live a better life. He had enough savings to survive until he finished school. So, how could he just end it? Was my sacrifice for nothing? No. Fuck. Stop. If you were here, you'd probably scold me. Tell me how much of a fucking idiot I am, right? I lost my voice then. Did I ask you to step aside? Do you think I've ever cared about the money? No, that was just an excuse from you, wasn't it? You stopped chemo because you lost sight of yourself. You were afraid of spending your days meaninglessly, knowing that you had no future to look forward to. You chose the fastest way to leave. Leaving money for me. That was just an excuse you probably told yourself. No, I know it. After all, I'm just like you now. I brought my hand toward my chest. It hurt. It hurt so much. The pain was taking over me. Ha. My vision blurred, and every single breath was accompanied by even more pain. Noel's hand shook. Since you can run, I can too, right? He looked at me. This time, it really felt like he could see me. Tears, uninvited, welled up, and my mouth trembled. What was this? How could speaking hurt so much? You won't mind if I join you, right? No. My voice came out weak. I found that I could no longer shout. The energy drained from my body. This sense of helplessness. It slowly carved itself into my mind. So did the pain. Ha. Noel smiled. In a way, his smile seemed liberating. But all I could feel was helplessness. I could feel myself breaking. The colors started to drain from the world. I could see the younger version of him, standing before me, asking me to buy him ice cream. It was just a couple of months after our parents' death. It was just the two of us back then. He had only been 10 back then. I remember that day clearly because that was the day he regained his smile. I worked hard to keep it that way. To make it so that he wouldn't stop smiling. So, staring at the sight before me, I felt myself lose my breath. His smile. The one I promised to keep. It was gone. I took it away from him. It hurts. Clank. I flinched. My breath seemed to be caught in my throat as the gun fell from Noel's hand. His eyes, which appeared to be devoid of any light, lowered. Drip. And tears continuously poured down from them. Biting his lips, he weakly leaned back. I'm scared. He covered his face with both hands. I don't want to die. His shoulders trembled, but I don't want to live. The world seemed to grow faint. What do I do? Just before it all faded, his head turned to face my direction once more. Tell me, brother. What do I do? That was the last time I heard his voice. Brightness engulfed my vision, and I found myself in a familiar place. All eyes were fixed on me. Ha. But all I could feel was pain. My chest felt tight and heavy. Each breath felt heavier than the last. And my vision was blurry. It was at that point that I closed my eyes and saw a notification. Level 2. Sadness, EXP plus 15%. Level 2? At first, I was surprised, but then I understood. Unlike fear, I was familiar with sadness. It was all I ever knew in my previous life. It was no wonder my understanding of it was greater than fear or any other emotion. And with such thoughts, I opened my eyes. When was the last time that you cried? Words flowed out of my mouth all of a sudden. They came out smoother than I thought. They were directed towards one person. What are, huh? He stopped mid-sentence. A strange silence filled my surroundings. One that was broken by me as I stood up from my seat. Under the eyes of all present, I walked up the aisles before stopping in front of him. His focus wasn't on me. This. What is this? Flustered, he touched his cheeks. They were stained with tears. Gripping his shirt, he looked up at me. What's going on? What did you do? I didn't answer. Instead, I asked, did I touch you? The tears streamed with even more force as his face paled. I clenched my teeth and raised my head. Recollections of the scene I witnessed replayed in my mind, threatening to force tears out of my eyes. But I held them in. I let the pain center towards my chest, where it had all accumulated. Instead, I directed my attention towards Anders. I opened my arms. You say I'm weak, unfitting of my rank. Here's your chance. Hit me. With his hand on his chest, he only looked at me. I looked back at him. So you can't? I reached my hand forward to grasp his shoulder. He flinched at the touch but wasn't able to free himself from it. Tell me. He seemed to be in too much pain to answer. I could relate. My body was being eaten from the inside. The pain was unbearable, and every second I stood felt like torture. But I still held myself. I couldn't show weakness. Not yet. I then recalled the words he threw at me before this. Even then, I doubt you'll be able to do anything to me. That was when I asked, am I doing something now? He didn't answer. Squeezing his shoulder, I murmured, I thought so. Chapter 15, The Weakest Black Star, 3. Drip. Drip. Tears stained the floor. Their gentle drip echoing throughout the otherwise quiet room. Those tears. They weren't my tears. Do you still think I'm weak? Every word that came out of my mouth seemed to liberate me from the pain that was engulfing my chest. But it wasn't enough. That's why I squeezed his shoulder. It helped me alleviate the pain further while, at the same time, keeping me from falling. It was hard to remain standing. What did you do? Helplessness marred his features as he looked at me. I clenched my teeth. My eyes felt moist. The tears were trying their best to escape my eyes. But I didn't let them. I kept my eyes fixed on him. There's only a weak person. No weak path. I repeated the same words I said before. His expression changed, and the tears continued to pour down his face. But I could see anger interweaving with the sadness. You. His lips quivered. He struggled to make eye contact with me. That didn't last for long and his jaw clenched tightly, his expression twisted. Then, bang! My face stung, and my head turned. His fist reached my cheek, pushing it to the side. Even so, even as my head turned, I didn't look away. I kept my eyes on him. It hurt. But I was already being consumed by pain. This was nothing compared to what I was currently experiencing. It tickled. Am I weak? I asked again. His eyes faltered, and the anger seemed to fade. A new emotion started to invade his mind. One that I was responsible for. Fear. The effect wasn't as powerful as the first time I used it. Nor was it as strong as sadness, but under the current circumstances, it was enough. Anger was slowly being replaced by fear. His lips quivered, and his fist lowered. Finally, he looked away from me. And that's when I finally muttered. Pathetic. Coming out of the classroom, Aoife stopped by the statue that stood at the front of Dorset Hall. Towering over her, it was an imposing statue. One that every student couldn't help but notice. It was the statue of the first emperor, Dorset Gaius Megrail. Her ancestor in the first zenith. Indeed, the blood of a zenith flowed through her. A great honor that came with heavy responsibilities. It had been centuries since a zenith had been born into their family. Their efforts at nurturing a zenith had been in vain, and despite all their policies to keep others in check, the other houses were catching up. In particular, Delilah Venice Rosenberg. A name stood out in her mind. She was the closest to the zenith and the one with the power to end their reign. I won't fail. To become the zenith. Aoife was willing to do anything. It was her duty as a princess and her goal. Students flowed out of the hall, with many of them glancing in her direction as they passed by. Ignoring them, she lowered her head to stare at her hand. It was trembling. Slightly. Why? Aoife's only question was why. But at heart, she knew the reason for this. She shut her eyes, allowing her mind to delve deep as she rewound the events that had unfolded earlier. Anders Madison. He was one of the cadets to look out for. Ranked within the top hundreds, he was a very talented individual, and someone Aoife kept in mind for recruiting for her faction. She was especially pleased by his boldness. Simply put, you're not fit for the role. You're weak. His bold words back then echoed the thoughts of everyone present. The weakest black star. That was who Julian Dacre of Venus was. Weak. He was truly weak. To the point where one might wonder how he had managed to get himself into the position. It was a thought that consumed Aoife's mind over the past week. How could someone as weak as him become the Black Star? She could recall his expression back then. Under the barrage of Anders's words, he seemed calm. Unfazed, almost. It was as if he truly didn't care. But was that the case? Did he truly not care? At the time, when she saw him close his eyes, Aoife thought, he's running away. His actions again made her ask the question, just what is so special about him? His attitude was trash, his monoflow was weak, and he wasn't of high noble birth. Why? She was confident that if the two of them were to fight one-on-one, she'd beat him with a simple flick of her finger. He was that weak in her eyes. The only one whom she truly deemed strong was not Julian, but his knight. Leon Rowan Ellert. He was ranked second, and unlike Julian, Aoife could see that he was strong. She couldn't see herself beating him easily. If she wanted to beat him, she'd have to pull out every card she had. When was the last time that you cried? Even now, She could remember his voice. The tone, the smoothness, and the fluidity of it. It wasn't something she could forget. Never. What are, huh? Ah. The way Ander's face changed at his words, and tears flowed out of his eyes. She could also remember. The change was so abrupt that hardly anyone was able to react. Aoife was one of the few who was able to understand what had happened. By the time she did, however, Julian was already standing in front of him. "Did I touch you?" He didn't. His every action seemed calculated. As if he were evoking a certain flow. First he evoked sadness. "When was the last time you cried?" Then, he evoked anger. "Here's your chance. Hit me. You. Bang. And then. Pathetic." He evoked fear. Who? Aoife opened her eyes. The entire time, he was in complete control. It was an unmistakable fact. What made emotive mages so scary? It wasn't their strength. Far from it. They were weak. Even the weakest mage could kill them. But that was only on the premise that they didn't fall for their words. Through the exploitation of a single emotion, emotive mages could evoke and manipulate other emotions. Though different, they were all intertwined together. And the more emotions an emotive mage could manipulate, the stronger they were. Emotions were a weakness. It was something that Aoife understood all too well. Aoife's fist slowly clenched. He's weak. That was undeniable. But he's strong. Weak but strong. Julian. A new name crawled its way up in her mind. It stood right alongside Delilah's. A familiar feeling. One that I had grown accustomed to. My legs were weak. Each breath felt tiring. And the world felt empty. Colorless. It was just. Meaningless. There was nothing that excited me. Every one of my actions felt mundane. A chore. The tears that were threatening to spill from my eyes before were long gone. Tasteless. The food was tasteless too. It didn't even look appetizing. I placed the spoon down and looked around me. I was sitting alone in the canteen. Several eyes were trained on me, sneaking glances whenever I wasn't looking. I would have normally not minded. But it perfectly reflected the reality of my situation. I was a stranger to this world. An outlier. A pebble drifting in the raging sea, doing its best to keep itself from sinking. The world. It was suffocating. I wanted to go back. There was nothing more that I wanted. I was struggling. I truly was. Picking up the knife near me, I lightly traced my finger over its edge. A red line formed on my finger. But it doesn't hurt. What if I cut it off? Will it hurt then? Thoughts started to cloud my mind. They became more dangerous with each passing second. My mind was clear. I knew that my thoughts were stupid. But my insides were empty. Just because my mind was clear, it didn't mean I cared. Right now, I just wanted to feel something. Even if what I felt was pain. Something. I needed something. This emptiness that was consuming me. I wanted it to go away. My eyes continued to trace over the knife, just as my finger did. It seemed tempting. Just a little. It's not like this body is mine anyway. Just. I balled my hands into a fist and clenched my teeth. Every part of me tensed. I can't. Just like fear, sadness was consuming me. It was threatening to devour every part of me. An after effect of the skill I used. But unlike fear, pain couldn't save me. Right now, I wanted to feel pain. Something. I took a deep breath and reminded myself of my goal. Noel. Right. There was someone waiting for me. He was struggling too. Perhaps even more. I didn't care about myself, but I cared about him. For him. I could take on the pain. Taking a look around me, the noise finally entered my ears. I could hear again. Color also started to return. Alongside it was an intense pain. It squeezed tightly at my chest. Covering my eyes with both hands in a way that nobody noticed, I felt something wet brush against my finger. It took a while for me to realize what it was. Finally, my lips quivered. It. My tears. They had finally returned. Chapter 16, Mirror Dimension. Power over emotions. It was an interesting power. Sadness, anger, joy. In one way or another, they were all intertwined with one another. If exploited right, sadness could bring anger, anger could bring fear, and fear could bring joy. They were all connected, and the combinations were endless. But can I keep my sanity? The power came with a massive drawback. My sanity. It slowly ate at it. I took a deep breath to relax my mind. Status. A familiar screen appeared in my vision. My gaze eventually fell on the spells that were listed. There was something that I was curious about. Beginner type spell, emotive, anger. Beginner type spell, emotive, sadness. Beginner type spell, emotive, fear. Beginner type spell, emotive, happiness. Beginner type spell, emotive, disgust. Beginner type spell, emotive, surprise. I wordlessly raised my hand and reached for the window in front of me, nothing. Yet again, my hand phased through the panel. It wasn't a surprising result. I had tried a lot of methods but it didn't seem to be possible to physically touch or is it? I tried something different. Closing my eyes, I focused my attention on the area near my abdomen. Slowly, a warm current passed through me, which I guided toward my fingers. My hand experienced an odd tickling sensation, reminiscent of when my hand fell asleep, paresthesia. Unbothered, I reached forward toward the panel. More specifically, toward the first spell. Anger. Beginner type spell, emotive, anger. Level 1, 0%-13%-100%. A small bar appeared right beneath. Finally, a change occurred, and I was able to get an idea of my current progress. I proceeded to tap on the other bars. Sadness, level 2, 23%. Fear, level 1, 37%. Happiness, level 1, 37%. Disgust, level 1, 37%. Surprise, level 1, 37%. Interesting. The only spell that was level 2 was sadness. The revelation didn't come as a surprise to me. I had already been aware of it. What I wasn't aware of was its progress. 23%. That was a lot more than I thought. So in the end, real-life experience does count in the progress. My real-life experience. Not Julian's. The fact that I was already level 2 and that the other emotions also had a little progress served to affirm my thoughts. If that wasn't enough proof. Hands of Malady, level 1, 0%. Chains of Alachantria, level 1, 0%. Ha! A laugh escaped my lips. How could it not? 0%, not even 1%. Simply 0. I guess that proves it. The previous Julian was capable of using such spells. Though not brilliantly, he was capable. That was what Leon had told me. Since it was at 0%, I was able to confirm my previous thought. My current progress. Be it emotive, or elemental. They were all mine. Not the previous Julian's, but mine. Who? I took a deep breath. Closing my eyes, I extended my hand forward. A small circle floated in the air in front of me and several runes started to light up. Again. Located a 5-minute walk from the Rondio dorms was a training facility called the Carlson Hall. This facility, spanning 1,000 square meters, housed an array of enchanting devices and exercise equipment for training purposes. Typically bustling with cadets, the hall was relatively empty. With it being the start of the year, the cadets were all busy socializing with one another. Socialization was important in the noble circle. Therefore, it was encouraged by the households to attend such gatherings. All with the exception of a few people. So you're here. An exception to all of this was Leon. He was drenched from head to toe, sword in hand. In front of him stood a dummy, its body cut in two. His movements came to a stop upon hearing the familiar voice behind him. "Evelyn? What brings you here?" "I can't train?" With a helpless shrug, she pointed toward the training dummies nearby. Seeing them, Leon made a look of understanding. "I see." He proceeded to wipe the sweat from his forehead. An awkward silence followed suit. Evelyn made an exasperated face when she looked at him. "I'm not going to talk about him." "Yes? I won't ask, so you don't need to be so tense." Was he that obvious? For a moment, Leon struggled to answer. "I get it. You don't want to talk about him. I also don't want to talk about him. It doesn't always have to be about him." "Is that so?" Leon's shoulders relaxed, and so did his expression. "How have you been?" 5 years. That was how long the two hadn't seen each other. The Avenas household was one of the fastest rising noble houses. Naturally, their circle was vast. The Verlice family was one of the families that they had gotten close to over the past years. There was a time when there were talks between the houses to have Evelyn and Julian engaged. However, that fell through in the end. "Well, I've been good, I guess." Evelyn shrugged and smiled wryly. Waving her hand, She pointed at the broken dummy. "Forget about me. I'm surprised that you managed to get the second seat. You've improved quite a lot. You could hardly hold the sword the last time I met you." "I've trained." "What's with that look? So bland." Evelyn's face scrunched up. "I didn't take you for such a bland guy." She then mimicked his expression, going all stony. "I've trained. Worked hard." And flexed her muscles. Staring at the scene, Leon turned his head and covered his mouth with his fist. Sorry. Please, the fact that you don't even realize." Evelyn's face changed, and she stopped mid-sentence. "What?" "Don't tell me." Leon turned his head further. "Don't tell me what?" But Evelyn insisted. "You." He turned his head again. "What?" Leon's face was reddening. "Don't tell me you actually have feelings for him." Her cheeks flushed, and she tried to cover her mouth with her hand. "I do?" "Well, you're blushing," he pointed out. She glared at him. "Shut up." Okay, he said, holding up his hands in mock surrender. "So, you don't want to talk about him, and I don't want to talk about him. Let's talk about something else." "Fine," she huffed. "How's your training going?" "It's been good," he said, his tone becoming more serious. "I've learned a lot from Sir Lancelot." "Ah, yes. The legendary knight," she said, her eyes lighting up with interest. "What's he like?" Leon thought for a moment before responding. "He's a tough instructor, but fair. He pushes you to your limits and beyond. I've never felt more alive than when I'm training with him." "Sounds intense," Evelyn said, nodding. "I've heard he's quite the character, too." "He definitely has his quirks," Leon agreed. "But he's also incredibly wise. He's taught me a lot about not just swordsmanship, but life as well." "That's good to hear," she said with a genuine smile. "I'm happy for you, Leon." Leon felt his chest warm at her words. "Thank you, Evelyn." The two of them lapsed into a comfortable silence, watching the knights in training pass by. It was a peaceful moment, free from the shackles of their past and the tension that came with. Finally catching a glimpse of his face, her eyes widened. "You're blushing, aren't you? Holy shit, don't tell me you don't know that's how you react?" Fuck. Mirror dimension, a phenomenon that took over the continent of Aurora. There wasn't much information regarding the mirror dimension. All that was known was that it expanded each year, slowly swallowing up the continent in the process. From there, existences known as Children of the Dark emerged into the continent. These entities of chaos shook the very foundation of humanity, swallowing up territories at a fast pace. The general situation was as such. At least, that was how I understood things. Although the situation sounds dire, the Empire is still holding up well. In fact, we've managed to regain some of our territories as of late. Which is why you need to memorize the monsters that are on the list. It'll be useful for you when you enter the mirror dimension. The class I was attending was called Heritage Recollection and Monster Analysis. There were a lot of things to remember, from the history, monster types, classifications, and so on. Looking at the long list of things that I needed to memorize, I felt my head hurt a little. It reminded me of the times back when I was in school. That said, it didn't seem like I was the only one struggling. Staring at the white-haired figure sitting a few rows ahead of me, I held myself back from laughing. With a she ruffled her hair, muttering things like, "I'm fucked. Should I just sell myself? Fuck, no. Shit. Just a lot of nonsense." At that moment, as if she could sense my gaze, her head turned and our eyes met. My expression stiffened at the sight of her, and an image flashed in my mind. It's her. One of the girls from the vision. Before I could process the information, she tilted her head and mouthed, "What are you looking at?" I thought about answering but decided against it when I felt the professor's gaze pause on me. Clicking her tongue, she returned her attention to the front. The lecture continued from there. It only ended when another hour passed. By then, I was mentally drained. We've only covered a portion of the syllabus. We still have a lot of things to go through. Please go back home and digest the information. As if he wasn't satisfied, the lecturer added, "I'll review what you've learned in the next lecture." A pained groan followed his exit as the white-haired girl gripped her head. "I'm fucked. I'm done. Shit. At this rate, I'll fail. Do I have no choice but to sell myself?" She looked around before settling her gaze toward the nearest boy. "Oi. How much would you pay for me? Eh?" Flustered, the boy took a step back. She didn't seem to mind and approached him. Her every action attracted the gaze of those around her. She was that pretty. Too bad she was crazy. Batshit crazy. How about this? She leaned her elbow on his shoulder. Leaning her head closer, she scratched her chin and nodded. As if she had just made a big decision. You give me all your money, and in exchange, I'll let you hold my hand. How about it? Eh? Is that a no? TSK. She clicked her tongue and proceeded to her next target. It went on like this for a while before she left with a gloomy look. I thought about leaving, but the scene was rather entertaining. I wanted to know if anyone was willing to pay all their money just to hold her hand. That, and the fact that I dreaded the next class. Dimension diving. As the name suggested, it was a class designated to emulate the environment of the mirror dimension. While it wasn't the real deal, and the monsters were fake, it didn't mean it was impossible to get injured. Quite frankly, I didn't want to go. My skills were not up to par. The only thing I could do was stay behind and watch. Please gear yourself and put on your suits. We'll be starting in the next half hour. A loud voice reminded me of the impending doom. Sighing to myself, I turned to look at Leon, who had remained quiet the entire time. Turning his head to look at me, he raised his fist as if to say, "Cheer up," before packing up his staff and heading for the door. Hey, wait. Why are you leaving? Yes? Leon stopped to look at me. Aren't you supposed to be my knight? Wasn't his entire job to protect me? Oh. That's right. So. Are you going to file a complaint? No. Then. He nodded his head and excused himself. Ah. I held my hand over my forehead. Fuck. I really didn't want to go. Chapter 17, Mirror Dimension, 2. It was as if the air itself had cracked. Fragments, like that of a fractured mirror, lingered suspended in mid-air. A small crowd formed outside of the shattered space. There were over several hundred students, all of them huddled together in their cliques. The same couldn't be said for me. Be it because they were avoiding me, or just didn't like me, nobody appeared anywhere around me. I was the only one who was alone. Mirror dimension. Not that I minded, since my attention was on the cracked space in front of me. Everything about it felt ominous. Still, it wasn't like I had a choice. Whether I liked it or not, I had to go. Perhaps I'll be able to find answers here. While I was in the midst of my thoughts, the instructor, a mere wallow, showed up. The surroundings went quiet. Since everyone is gathered here, I'll make things short. We will now be diving in groups of 5. I'll announce the list shortly. The noise that had previously taken hold of the space increased as the cadets grew restless. So we're doing this in teams. It'll be random so the balance won't be right. However, that shouldn't matter since you aren't being graded for this. It's all about getting used to the environment for when you end up entering the more dangerous parts of the mirror dimension. He then proceeded to give a rundown of the team's compositions. A team generally was composed of 4 to 5 members, 2 damage dealers, 1 long range, 1 tank, and 1 support. It generally alternated between 1 and 2 damage dealers per team. In that sense, I was assigned the support role. It is up to you to decide the team leader. Be it the strongest person, or who you feel will be able to lead better. It's up to you. The teams were announced shortly after. Team 7. 1. Juliana Venus. 2. Roseanne Brighton. 3. Aoife Megrail. 4. James Milner. 5. Adon Whitelock. Team 7. A lot of unfamiliar names appeared on the list. There were over 1,000 first years, and it was hard for me to remember everyone's name. However, there was one name that stood out from the rest. Aoife Megrail. The Megrail name stood out immediately. It was the name of the ruling house and one of the women that appeared in my vision. Taking my eyes away from the board, I met her gaze. Her expression was hard to read, and briefly, I felt a certain coldness flash in her eyes. That went by really fast. She was the first one to approach me. Her red hair gracefully swung in the air as her beautiful lips parted open. Were on, so it seems. My tone came out rather stiff. I wasn't quite sure how to address her. With her being a princess, I had to be careful with my words. That was until she spoke again. "You're weak." She spoke in a manner that left no room for debate. "That's why I will be the team leader." I didn't answer and just stared at her. She looked back at me. Straight in the eyes. It was as if she was challenging me. Wanted me to refuse. But do as you see fit. All she did was do me a favor. I didn't want to be the leader. I wasn't fit to be one either. As her composed expression began to reveal cracks under the impact of my actions, a smile tugged at my lips while I lowered my head. Team leader. The air was dry. The world appeared monochromatic, enveloped in shades of gray, with the sole exception of the vivid red and orange tones emanating from the sun and the sky. I was running through a rocky field. The other team members were running ahead of me. Unlike me, they didn't seem to be struggling. "Let's stop here." Thankfully, we stopped just as I couldn't hold my composure. Halting, Aoife looked around before settling her gaze over a large rock. "Let's take a small break for now. We're almost near our destination." Taking advantage of the situation, I sat on the rock to catch my breath. There were a total of 5 people in the group, and as I sat down, none of the members approached me and huddled over to Aoife. Can't blame them. Had I been in their position, I too would have been like them. It was unfortunate that in the future, there was a chance she'd kill me. I needed to be careful around her. An appropriate distance was required. Still, from where I was, I could overhear their conversation. "Team leader, where exactly are we going?" "Gathering point. We should be able to meet with the other members there." "Ah, is that so?" A woman with gold locks sighed in relief. Roseanne Brighton. With a long staff in hand, she was the long-ranged fighter of the team. An elemental user with dual attributes: fire and water. She looked around. Things have been proceeding rather smoothly. We still haven't seen many monsters yet. Is it because this is one of the safer areas? The point of this excursion is for us to familiarize ourselves with the environment. There shouldn't be that many monsters. Standing at an imposing height of 2 meters, he towered over all of us. James Milner, the team's tanker, replied. "Ah. That's right." Chewing on a jerky, Aoife glanced around. "Still, keep your guard up. Always stays alert. Don't let your guard down." "Got it." Nodding, Aoife finished the jerky and patted her hands. "Let's go." We were back on the move. The terrain shifted, and trees emerged in my field of vision, their lee. Gradually, the light dimmed, and I sensed myself losing my sight. Wisps of fog clung to the gnarled trunks of the trees around us, making it hard for me to see. Continue. A sense of dread assaulted my mind as we marched forward. From eyesight to hearing, we were gradually losing sight of all our senses. Ha! My breath started to feel heavy. Was it because I was growing tired? A thought that accompanied my mind as I continued forward. Yuck! My head throbbed all of a sudden. The pain wasn't intense. It came as fast as it left. By the time I regained my senses, the light started to return. What was that? Checking myself, I felt nothing strange with my body. Staring at my hands, I frowned but continued forward. My mind eventually relaxed after a couple of minutes. I'm probably tired. Just as I felt my chest grow lighter. Shiving. Something streaked through the air, coming at me from a nearby tree. It was so fast that I had no time to react. Before I even had the chance to gather my bearings, an intense pain flooded my chest. Thump. And I fell to my knees. PFTT. Blood spilled from my mouth as I felt my head grow light. The pain was hard to describe. It was intense, and my consciousness grew faint. Clank. The last thing I managed to see before I lost consciousness was a small creature diving from the front, right toward Aoife, who just barely managed to react. Shit. And then the world grew dark. Or so I thought. Whop. As if oxygen had been removed from my lungs, I took a deep breath. My consciousness returned and clarity returned. Scrunch. Scrunch. The familiar sound of my footsteps echoed through the ground, and as I looked ahead, familiar backs came into view. What just? The memory of the situation was still vivid in my mind. Although my vision was hindered, the path was familiar. From the trees to our current location. It was all the same. Just in a couple of minutes, we should be coming out. Indeed, as I thought, lights started to return. A familiar view. Gradually, my feet started to slow down. Noticing my situation, the others stopped as well. With a frown, Aoife looked at me. "Are you tired?" I didn't answer her. Scanning my surroundings, everything appeared to be the same as before. So much that it felt eerie. Julian? The positions of the trees, the placement of the rocks, and the sensation of the air, every detail rushed vividly back to my memory. It can't be, right? Hey! I snapped out of it when 2 large hands grasped my shoulders. A rough face inched close to mine. "Someone is talking to you, pay attention." That was when I realized everyone was looking at me. Closing my eyes, I took a deep breath before opening them again. "Let go. You." Raising my hand, I was just about to grasp his shoulder when he let go and cursed. "Arrogant bastard." Ignoring him, I patted and adjusted my clothes. Feeling Aoife's intense gaze, I felt compelled to say something. There's an ambush ahead. Maybe. I wasn't too sure. An ambush? Making a dumbfounded look, James's mouth dropped. Is that really the best excuse you came? Step. Ignoring him, I took a step forward. Hey! Step. And then another. Carefully counting each step, I closed my eyes and replayed the memory in my mind. Gradually, I arrived near the exact spot where the memory ended. I was just one step away. My feet stopped. Just one step. As long as I took a step. Are we seriously going to waste time waiting for him? He's just trying to save himself from the embarrassment. If. Step. I took that step. And. Shing. Just as in the memory, the moment I took the step, the tree rustled and something fast streaked through the air. But unlike last time, I was prepared. Tilting my body ever so slightly, it passed right before me. With a thud, it came crashing toward the ground, revealing a glimpse of its features. I didn't pay much attention to its looks. Turning my attention toward my group, I nudged with my chin. Get rid of it. Chapter 18, Mirror Dimension, 3. Foresight. The gift of glimpsing into the future, a power I held. It was the third time now, and even now, I didn't fully understand it. What triggered it? Was it just random, or did it follow a set pattern? Questions flooded my mind. But I didn't have long to ponder over them. Splat. Grabbing my attention, a black substance splattered on the ground, presumably from the monster that had just been killed. I didn't care to look, though. The vision grabbed my thoughts as it replayed in my mind. Every detail, from the minutiae to the grand, was etched vividly in my memory. With a thought, I could recall everything that had happened. From the pain to the very last moments when something dashed at the team leader. The memories were vivid in my mind, and as my gaze settled on a specific tree, my hand instinctively reached out, extending a finger to point at it. That one. I was sure. The memories told me so. Get rid of that one too. Another one was hiding in that tree. How did he know? Aoife looked at his back, her eyes falling on the creature on the ground. Rabbleflit, an infant rank beast. Though the lowest of all classes, it was a beast that specialized in stealth and ambushes. They were both deaf and blind. They attacked based on nearby vibrations, limiting their range to a small area. Even so, to compensate for this evident flaw, their mastery over stealth was unparalleled. Unless one possessed proficiency in search magic or had extremely keen mana senses, detecting them was nearly impossible. Was Julian proficient in search magic? She didn't think so. So how? Mana sensitivity? It's hiding on that tree over there. Aoife followed his finger. Again, she could see nothing. Team leader. Aoife looked back at him, immediately noticing his annoyed expression. Yes? As far as I'm concerned, there's another creature hiding over there. Aoife followed his gaze, her eyes scanning the tree. How can you be so sure? It's part of my skill. Just trust me. She nodded, deciding to believe him for now. After all, his skills were the reason she had chosen to follow him in the first place. They approached the tree carefully, the others following suit. The tension was palpable in the air as they reached the spot where the black substance had landed. It's hiding up there. I pointed to a particular branch, my voice low and certain. Aoife squinted, still unable to see anything. But there's nothing there. It's using stealth magic. It won't be visible to the naked eye. Her brows furrowed, but she didn't argue. Instead, she turned to the team. All right, spread out and keep your eyes peeled. We don't want to be caught off guard again. The team members nodded, their expressions a mix of confusion and concern. They fanned out, each taking a position around the tree. I focused my mana, preparing to cast a simple detection spell. It was a basic one, but it should be enough to reveal the hidden creature. The mana wrapped around the tree, searching for any signs of life. And there it was. A faint pulse of mana, almost imperceptible. I pointed at the exact location. It's right there. Aoife looked up, her eyes narrowing. She couldn't see anything, but she didn't question it anymore. Take it down. Without hesitation, the team members attacked the spot. The sound of swords and spells filled the air, and a moment later, the rabbleflit fell from the tree, its stealth magic broken. It let out a high-pitched shriek before it was silenced. Aoife stared at the creature, her eyes wide. You were right. I nodded, feeling a mix of relief and... I'm not proficient in long-range magic. If you wouldn't mind. Right. Aoife eyed the tree in the distance and flicked her finger. The tree shriveled up, compressing like a scrunched-up paper. It all happened so fast that the creature was unable to react. Hike! After a deafening screech, what followed was the creature's shriveled-up body. Aoife took a look at the creature before turning her head away. How ugly. Just like Julian, she was talented in two fields: mind and body. Unlike Julian, who was proficient in the emotive field under the mind classification, she was more proficient in telekinesis. With a single thought, she could manipulate an inanimate object. Yuck, it looks nasty. A different figure drew near, leaning forward as her golden locks cascaded over her face while she grimaced. They really do look different than the textbooks, don't they? Team leader. It was. What was her name again? Aoife struggled to recall. Nonetheless, she nodded her head. Yeah. That was when two other figures approached her. With bright smiles, they started to praise her. You were amazing. That was great. I can't believe you're so strong. It was a situation she had grown used to. Typically, she didn't mind such flattery. But strangely, they felt rather annoying at the moment. I didn't do anything. She found it odd. Since when did she mind such things? At heart, she already knew the answer. Swallowing her pride, much to the surprise of the others, she moved toward a certain figure. He stood alone, his gaze lingering over the nearby trees. She stopped when she was a few meters away from him. Taking note of her appearance, he glanced at her. What? His tone was as flat and rude as ever. However, she didn't mind it. She knew he could take advantage of her cracks if she showed them. Thank you. The situation would have been difficult had you not warned us. Ah. He extended his hand to brush his shoulders. You're right. Question mark. Aoife found the entire situation somewhat funny. She somewhat expected such an answer from him. It seemed fitting. Could she be starting to get an idea of his character? Can you continue doing it? Aoife believed that moving forward, if they wanted no accidents to occur, they needed his assistance. He had proven his abilities worked. Even as the other members showed clear signs of refusal, she ignored them. For this journey to go smoothly, she needed him. Pride was meaningless under such circumstances. She expected him to feel the same too, but as their gazes met, he shook his head. No. Casually taking out a jerky, he bit into it and turned away. Even if I want to, I can't. Staring at his back, Aoife's expression didn't change. Such a response, it was fitting of him. But as expected. I really can't stand him. The mirror dimension was an expansive space devoid of any life. The amount of manpower used by the kingdom to keep the space from expanding was enormous. Thankfully, just as threatening as the mirror dimension was, it was also a land filled with opportunities. Black Region Supply Station. In front of a levitating panel adorned with a myriad of shifting images stood a gracefully poised woman with flowing black hair. Delilah's gaze seemed fixed on a certain panel. Could it be that he's very perceptive to mana? Get rid of that one too. The way he was able to detect Rabble-Flit so effortlessly despite not specializing in such magic. The way he was able to avoid its ambush. It aroused curiosity. When one thought about it, what he did wasn't all that impressive. Recognizing the mana flow of a creature was something that most mages were capable of doing after reaching a certain point. The key point, however, was certain point. Tier 3 and above was the requirement. In other words, he was able to achieve something like that before even reaching Tier 3. Fascinating. Truly. But that was all. It was just fascinating. Her lingering interest in him waned when she brought her attention to a specific paper. It was a document detailing Julian's background. The contents weren't very thick. However, a certain page caught her attention. It was a close-up image of him. Her eyes slowly traced down toward his forearm, where a small black tattoo appeared. It was an unremarkable tattoo. One that any other person could have. But she was confident. After doing an intensive background check, she was sure of it. So you've finally shown yourselves. Delilah gently closed her eyes and took a deep breath. The paper in her hand wrinkled under her grasp. To think you'd even try to target this place. Finally, cracks appeared on her usually composed expression as her lips twisted up. A sneer marred her features. How bold. She spat out, trying her best to suppress the raging storm that was boiling in her chest. Staring at the tattoo in the picture, her expression turned frosty. How very bold. Looks like all the teams have gathered. There were no other hiccups on our journey to the designated spot. That was good because I still struggled to clear my mind of the vision. I still felt the lingering after effects of my death. Thankfully, it happened fast. But the very last moments were still deeply rooted in my mind. What you guys currently experienced was merely a taste of the dimension. The deeper you venture, the harder things will become. Thankfully, our empire set up several safe stations throughout. This one being one of them. Amir Wallo gave a long-winded statement. He gave us a short overview of our current location. Looking around, I had to hold myself from expressing my surprise. High walls constructed from sturdy rock enclosed the area, while tents were scattered throughout. In the distance, a fissured space marked the entrance and exit points where people came and went. It was a strange sight. One that I didn't think I would get used to easily. This is a rather small safe station. There's plenty deeper within the dimension, but you won't get to experience those just yet. For now, enjoy yourselves here. We will return to the Institute in an hour. The cadets all separated. Perhaps because everything seemed so new, everyone looked strangely excited as they scattered to check out the safe zone. I thought about checking the place too, but I'm tired. I felt strangely tired. My eyelids were growing heavier, and each step felt heavier than the last. It was to the point where I had no choice but to find a place to sit. Taking a deep breath, I covered my face. What sort of situation was this? It wasn't as though I had done much coming here. My group members did most of the killings while I watched from behind. The only time I acted was when. Could it be that? Was this the consequence of the inside ability? If that was the case, I was more than happy with it. Compared to the backlash from immersion, this felt like nothing. Shit, have I become too used to this? Physical pain, tiredness, mental trauma. It felt like I had experienced a lot of things over the past week. This is crazy. Pain seized my body all of a sudden. It was so intense that I couldn't even shout. Spit flew from my mouth as I lost control of my body. My vision blurred, and the world tilted. What's going on? Clutching the side of the bench I occupied with all my strength, my legs quivered. It was hard to describe the pain I was in. It seemed as if it aimed to consume my mind, stimulating every corner of my consciousness before honing in on a particular point. A familiar spot. And as my gaze fell on the spot, I finally found my breath again. I didn't know how to feel. Lowering my head, I stared at my forearm, where a small tattoo appeared. It was unlike how it was before. Something changed. Of all things. The second leaf of the tattoo had lit up. It had changed. Chapter 19, Language. It was 12:45 a.m. The stars hung in the sky, and an unusual quietness enveloped the surroundings. It felt strangely peaceful. Taking a deep breath, I submerged my body in the bathtub. The water was cold, but it helped to keep my mind clear. Splash. The water splashed as I raised my arm out of the water. Focusing my attention on it, my eyes fell on the 4-leaved clover. 2 of the leaves were currently lit. The top and bottom. How strange. It was a mysterious tattoo. It had been with me ever since I appeared in this world. Even now, I struggled to understand what it did. What exactly was it? And what was the meaning behind it? 4 leaves, so 4 abilities? It seemed logical. I had already experienced one. My mind shuddered thinking about the first ability. From what I gathered, every time I used the ability, it would take an entire day for it to recharge before I could use it again. That said, it's impossible. While the ability replenished within a day, my mind couldn't recharge at the same pace. It was a dangerous ability. Every usage threatened to eat at my sanity. There was a reason I was so desperate to learn my other abilities. I didn't want to completely rely on this one. Of course, that didn't mean I wasn't prepared to use it. It's best if I tread lightly. So that I wouldn't lose sight of myself. I had to tread lightly. I floated on the water, with only my neck and hand breaking the surface. Considering the after effects of the first ability, the prospect of using the second one felt daunting. My eyes continued to linger over the tattoo. What was going to happen if I pressed on it? Was the side effect going to be greater? If so, would I be fine by the end of it? So many questions, and so few answers. Shall I try? There was only one way to find out. Although the idea seemed daunting, my mind was firm. Something was weighing heavily on my mind, and it was eating me up from the inside. All I wanted was for it to stop. And for that, I'll do it. Even if it meant more pain. With such thoughts, I reached for the second leaf. Silently I felt my finger touch my skin. It pressed on the area where the second leaf lit up and I closed my eyes in preparation for what was to come. But nothing? When I opened my eyes again, I noticed that everything was the same. There was no change. No, there was a change. What's this? The second leaf had lost its light. It was now back to how it was before. I silently stared at my hand for what felt like forever. Eventually, my head sank into the water. A part of me felt relieved, but another felt disappointed. Submerging myself deeper into the water, I let myself relax. In this strange silence, I felt at peace. The next day, classes were running as usual. First years weren't allowed to select their own courses. Therefore, as I glanced at the name of the lecture, I had to resist the urge to audibly groan. Language study. As expected. Even in this world, these types of lectures were unavoidable. The language that was used in this empire was called Limerick. A modern language that was only a few centuries old. It was good that when I came to this world I was already able to speak, or else. Let's not think about it. I silently entered the classroom. The classroom was rather large. With over 100 students, it had to be spacious. The moment I entered the classroom, several gazes fell on me. Their gazes still felt burdensome, but I was slowly starting to get used to them. I looked around before eventually making my way toward where Leon was. It was strange. Before, he'd used to follow me everywhere. As if he was studying my every move. However, now, he didn't seem to care as much. Still, he did save me a seat. So that's that. I had just taken a seat when Leon glanced at me and frowned. You look quite tired. Yeah. I hardly slept last night. I'm still adjusting. Oh. Take care of yourself. The conversation ended there. He was a man of little words, and so was I. Our conversations usually lasted for this long. To an outsider, they probably sounded like an extremely stiff conversation. However, I liked it to be like this. It was the perfect distance. Not too close and not too far. It was exactly 8 o'clock when the professor in charge came in. Looks like the class is packed. It's nice to see so many students eager to learn a new language. The professor was a middle-aged man adorned with a meticulously groomed mustache and gray hair. Clad in elegant attire, his demeanor exuded an unmistakable aura of grace. It was obvious at a glance that he was a high-end noble. As many of you know, the mirror dimensions hold many mysteries. From resources to ancient scripts. There are a lot of hidden treasures within the dimension. There was a reason why the Empire had many supply stations constructed within the dimension. It wasn't just for the sake of stopping the expansion of the dimension. It was also for the sake of gathering resources. From the ruins of old civilizations to wars and monsters. It held a lot of opportunity. As one says, knowledge is power. Within the ancient civilizations, there are many books detailing a lot of useful information regarding the expansion of the mirror dimension. By studying their language, we're empowering ourselves with the ability to understand their mistakes and technology. The professor seemed enthusiastic about the lecture. He went on to brag about the Empire's achievement in this field and how they were ahead of the other empires. But, I couldn't feel the same excitement he felt. A light yawn escaped my mouth. It was a quiet one. To the extent that no one else seemed to notice. But it perfectly reflected my state of mind. I was tired, and the lecture was boring. Having barely slept the previous night, coupled with how interesting the lecture was, I found myself succumbing to drowsiness. I had to pinch myself several times to keep myself from falling asleep. But there was a slight problem. While I did try my best to hide my drowsiness, it wasn't enough. Cadet Julian, is my lecture boring you? A shadow cast over the area I was in. Looking up, the professor was standing a few meters away from me. I scratched the side of my head. Did you manage to sleep last night? I thought about an appropriate answer but, no. I shook my head and came clean. I wasn't able to sleep much last night. The professor's expression stiffened all of a sudden. A small commotion followed suit as multiple eyes fell on me. The situation took me aback. What's going on? And then, I heard a small voice behind me. Was it just me or did his pronunciation sound even better than the professor's? Pronunciation? I thought back on the conversation I had with the professor. All he did was ask whether his lecture was boring me. What was so strange, Abba? That's when I realized. This. We were both speaking English. The language class ended after 1 hour. Evelyn walked with her head lowered, accompanied by a young woman with short brown hair. Oh, my back hurts. I can't believe we had to go through that. Theoretical classes always tended to be more boring than practical ones. And the fact that we have to memorize the alphabet before the next class is even worse. Kill me already. As Josephine grumbled, she suddenly recalled something and tilted her head. Evelyn, didn't you say you were acquainted with Julian? Ah? Evelyn snapped out of her thoughts at the mention of Julian's name. Did you say something? Geez, pay attention when I'm talking. Rubbing her forehead, Josephine repeated. Didn't you say you were acquainted with Julian? Ah, yes, Julian. An image of a man appeared in her mind. It stuck there and refused to leave. Was he always like that? I mean, not only is he the Black Star, but he also seems to be very proficient in English. Did you notice the professor's expression when he was talking to him? For a moment, I found myself questioning who the real expert was. Did you not feel the same way? Evelyn remained silent at the question. She had been quietly biting her lips for a while now. Josephine tilted her head in confusion. Why is she so quiet? She usually wasn't this quiet. What's wrong? Did you not feel the same? But yet again Evelyn remained quiet. Realizing that something was off, Josephine followed Evelyn's line of sight. Ah! That was when she saw a figure in the distance. He stood erect, his presence distinct from the others, and his strides measured and steady. His presence alone gathered the stares of those around him. Staring at him from the distance, Evelyn's eyes narrowed. Julian. What happened in the 5 years she hadn't seen him? Gradually, the distance between the two of them shrank. Step. With one more step, he appeared in front of her. As he passed, their gazes met briefly. She thought he'd continue forward, but his feet came to a stop just as he passed. Evelyn felt her shoulders grow tense at the fact. Turning around to face him, her eyes met with his. They were cold. Detached of any feelings. If before she... Chapter 20, Language, 2. I'm bleeding? Evelyn was taken aback. Of all the things she expected him to say, that was the last thing she could have imagined. She raised her hand to touch her lips. Feeling something wet trace over her finger, she looked down to see it stained and red. How did this? Evelyn had a hard time coming to terms with the situation. Just how hard had she been biting her lips? Ah. Raising her head, her expression changed. He was no longer in front of her. Looking around, she caught a glimpse of his disappearing back. Even now, his back stood straight and composed. As fast as he appeared, he had left. Ha! Staring at the scene, Evelyn let out a bitter laugh. Even now, she has a hard time understanding how to feel. Perhaps, this was for the best. Wiping her lips, she noticed Josephine looking at her with a dumbfounded expression. What? So you really did know him? Clasping her hands, Josephine brought her head closer to hers. A strange smile marred her face as she leaned closer. He's pretty wealthy, isn't he? Wealthy? Evelyn thought about it. Well, yeah. He did belong to an up-and-coming noble house. The Avena's household wasn't one to be trifled with. So. Yes. He's also handsome, right? Pretty intelligent, too, Evelyn's eyes narrowed. Where are you going with this? You think you can introduce me? Introduce? Why? I think I'm in love. What sort of foo? The institute boasted a massive library that spanned over several hundred square meters. With tens of thousands of books, it was the perfect place for me to familiarize myself with the world and its laws. English. My current focus was the languages section, or more specifically, the English section. I had been so drowsy that I hadn't noticed it then, but that was definitely English. I was all too familiar with the language. There's no way I wouldn't recognize it. So, how? Was this part of the game setting? That would make sense. But at the same time, it didn't. If you were to create an entirely different language and social hierarchy, what was the point of adding English? Some sort of Easter egg? That too seemed plausible. This should be the place. Language and literature. A bold sign was all it took for me to know where to go. Looking around, I scanned through the books before settling my gaze on a specific one. It was rather thick, and the cover felt extremely familiar. As expected, taking the book, my hand glossed over the cover, and I took a deep breath. English vocabulary, a book I would have never expected to see in this world. Flip. Even the contents were the same. I felt a mixture of different emotions staring at the book in front of me. In a sense, it reminded me a lot of home. Earth. There wasn't a day that passed when I didn't think about home. It was all I ever thought about. And while it was true that I had somewhat adapted to this world, I had no choice but to adapt to it. I would have been dead otherwise. There's a thesaurus as well. Scrolling through the books on the shelves, a lot of familiar ones, such as the dictionary and thesaurus, appeared. There also appeared to be a lot of novels. From romance to fantasy. Grabbing a certain book, I opened to a random page to see what it was about. But his warm body slowly embraced her. I closed it just as fast as I opened it. Just what were the game developers thinking? It was smut. Was this type of book even appropriate? But something feels off. I couldn't quite put my finger on it. But it all boiled down to a certain point. Or location. Mirror dimension. That was the place where these books were found. What I wanted to know was, what else did they find, and where exactly did they find it? Grip. Unknowingly, my grip on the book intensified. Though I wasn't certain, I felt a little closer to an answer. At the very least, I now had a direction. But do I have no choice but to go? The mirror dimension. It was an extremely dangerous place. One where a single mistake could cost one's life. However, as I thought about how these books came from such a place, I had no choice but to go there to get an idea of what was happening to me. Even if it was dangerous. But before that, I looked around me and took note of the numerous books that surrounded me. I should check out the other books. Perhaps I'd be able to find the answers to some of my questions. With how many books were present, I was bound to find something. 2. Putting the dictionary back, I headed deeper into the library. It was time for me to read. The library was teeming with books on all sorts of topics. How long? Before I knew it, the sky outside was dark. I had been so immersed in reading that I hadn't noticed that a lot of time had passed. It's already past dinner time. The time said 10 p.m. by now, the canteen was already closed, and there was no way for me to get food. But I didn't let that bother me. In the end, I learned a lot of things. From the history of the continent to how the mirror dimension worked. From my understanding, it was a fairly complicated place. While reading, what I grasped was merely rudimentary knowledge. The place was extremely mysterious, and despite the time invested, my questions remained unanswered. I wasn't disheartened, however. There were plenty of books for me to read. I was bound to find an answer sooner or later. Wham! A yawn inexplicably escaped from my lips. My tiredness was starting to catch up to me. I had no choice but to call it quits for the day. Let's see. I sorted out the books in front of me. A student could only be allowed to borrow a maximum of 3 books per semester. In front of me were 16 different books. All of them interested me, and if not for the rule, I would have brought them all back with me. Even so, rules were rules, and in the end, I settled for the ones that I deemed to be the most useful for me in the long term. History of the Aurora Continent, the basics of curse magic, rune language and its distinctions, these were the books I deemed to be the most useful for me in the long term. I stood up and packed my stuff, placing the books I didn't choose back to where they belonged. Thud. One of the books fell as I positioned them on the shelf. I reached out to grab it when my hand paused. There was a certain scent in the air that triggered my nose. This smell. It brought back certain memories that I had buried deep within my mind. Unknowingly, my feet moved toward where the smell came from until I eventually neared a secluded area of the library. There, a person stood. A familiar face. Long, platinum hair cascaded down her back as she leaned on the table. Wedged in her fingers was a cigarette. Tough luck. She took a long drag of the cigarette before blowing the smoke in my direction. I stood blankly. As the smoke drifted past me, unwanted memories clouded my mind once again. To the point where I unconsciously moved forward. Oi! Flicking the cigarette away, she clicked her tongue and stood more alert. What the hell are you doing? Tick. The cigarette fell right in front of me, and my feet buzzed. As if bewitched, I focused my attention on the lingering orange glow at the tip as smoke drifted through the air. My hand unknowingly trembled. Stomp. I raised my foot and stomped on it. The weight on my chest lightened, and I felt like I could breathe again. It was an impulsive action. One that I normally wouldn't have taken. But was that so hard to do? The side effects of the spell were still lingering in my mind, and the cigarette served to trigger painful memories I tried to hold deep within my mind. It was something that I had trouble controlling. Ah, shit. Ruffling her hair, her face crumpled. I didn't take you for such a fucker. Just like that bitch, you're the fucking same. That bitch? I never had the chance to figure out who she was referring to. By the time I focused my attention back on her, she was already gone. That was perhaps for the best. I wasn't in the right state of mind at the moment. Especially since vertical bar level 2. Sadness, EXP plus 0.01%. Vertical bar level 1. Anger, EXP plus 0.03%. Notifications continued to appear in my vision. However, despite their appearance, I couldn't bring myself to focus on them. The only thing in my mind was the thing beneath my foot. Right. The cigarette. It was beneath my foot. If I just moved it, gulp. I swallowed. The tip of my finger twitched, and I licked my lips. A strange anxiety overtook my mind. One that I was only able to calm down after taking a deep breath. Phew. Only then did I feel a little better. I shook my head and kept my foot firm, doing everything possible from letting myself see it. Ha. Really? I took another deep breath. Even in this life, you still haunt me.